Richard Tice has been hosting a Reform UK press conference in London today where he slammed both Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, as expected. He accused the government of betraying the British people on immigration, and he also announced Ben Habib as the party's candidate for the Wellingborough by-election.
Meanwhile, Sir Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, has been laying out their plans, as his party currently sits at around 11% in the polls. He also refused to rule out a possible coalition with Keir Starmer's Labour Party.
Curious. Now our political editor Christopher Hope and political correspondent Olivia Rutley join us now with the latest. Olivia, you've been watching both the Liberal Democrats and the Reform UK gear into action.
Well, absolutely. I'm in Guildford today, where the Lib Dems are very much bringing the fight to the Conservatives. Ed Davey was sounding very, very chipper this morning. He has his sights set on not just Guildford, where the Tories have a majority of 3,300, but lots of other seats in Surrey, including Woking and Jeremy Hunt's constituency of East Surrey. Now, Hunt's constituency has a majority of just over 8,000. He said that in normal times that probably wouldn't be a target seat, but this time round it most certainly is. And they're even looking at Michael Gove's seat up the road, which has a majority of about 18,000. They are sounding very enthusiastic, very excited, and they're not ruling out a coalition with Labour. Here's what Ed Davey had to say when I asked him about it.
Focused on a general election, I announced today that we think the general election should be on May the 2nd, and it couldn't come soon enough. We'll be tabling a bill in Parliament next week which would give MPs the chance to call the general election rather than Rishi Sunak running away and hiding away. Let's have that general election now. People need that change. People are fed up of waiting, and I'm really pleased and proud that the Liberal Democrats are ready for that election whenever it comes.
So yes to a coalition with Labour?
No, I'm focused on the general election. There are many, many Conservative MPs that Liberal Democrats can defeat across the whole of the south of England, parts of London, parts of Manchester, parts of Yorkshire, in Scotland, in Wales. Liberal Democrats are really on the march. We've shown with our historic by-election victories and our amazing local election results across the country that we are now an amazing campaigning force in British politics. And I think when the election comes, we will be the surprise of the election.
So not ruling out a coalition with Labour, but whatever happens coalition-wise, what's certain is that there is a tacit agreement between the Liberal Democrats and Labour, a sort of agreement for non-aggression. So in seats like this, here in Guildford, where the Lib Dems are advancing far, far quicker than Labour, there won't be too much of a Labour threat. Now, in the last election, Lib Dems didn't do too well. Since then, they've achieved 4 pretty magnificent by-election victories. Lib Dems, of course, are on very good ground fighting by-elections. They're very, very good at sending their resources to the right place, and people are willing to vote against the government in by-elections purely for a sort of protest vote. Things will look very different in a general election, but from what Ed Davey has been saying this morning, the Lib Dems are feeling very, very confident, and that is in those blue wall seats, those seats around the south of England, where traditionally the Tories do very well indeed. It's not just about the red wall anymore. It's not just about those seats where Labour usually wins, but that people lent their votes to the Conservatives in order to get Brexit done. The Tories probably have accepted quite a long time ago that many of those are going to go. Now they're having to fight for their own heartlands in the south of England.
Really interesting stuff. Thank you, Olivia, coming there from us from a bustling Guildford High Street. Looks like we talk a lot about the death of the High Street. Probably not in that constituency.
It's a nice high street.
Charming, yeah. Shall we cross now to Christopher Hope, who has a couple of guests for us with regard to Reform UK's announcement today.
That's right, Tom and Emily. I'm here in central London, a stone's throw from Westminster, where Richard Tice, the leader of Reform, has turned his fire on the Labour Party. He's called the prospect of a Labour government STARMERGEDDON. He said the Labour Party, want more taxes, they want to get closer to the sclerotic, recessionary European Union, more spending, more nanny-state regulations, and to betray the working class. And it's in that final line about the working class that's the clue for what's happening here. Reform is having a go at the possibility of a Labour Party. We do know they're drawing support away from the Tory party at 10% in the polls and rising, but they're going after Labour now, and that's what makes this launch more interesting than you might expect from the Reform Party. With me now is Richard Tice and Ben Habib. Now, Ben Habib is a candidate for the party in the Wellingborough by-election, but Richard Tice, to you first. Isn't a vote for reform a wasted vote because you don't know where voters live?
It's completely the opposite. It's the only way, actually, to save Britain. That is the truth. The crisis facing the country is so serious. The main two parties are two forms of socialism. High taxes, wasteful government spending, daft EU regulations, the government has betrayed people, mass immigration, a huge betrayal by the Tories that Labour want more of, and we are now the only party of the working class, of tens of millions of people who feel completely abandoned and let down. And we're the only party that will get rid of the job-destroying, deeply damaging net zero policies. And that's why I think people will vote for change.
The press conference today was packed. Most of the lobby reporters that were there hearing what you have to say. But weren't they really waiting for Nigel Farage? Weren't you worried about the questioning about Nigel Farage? He, of course, was a big player in UKIP, then the Brexit Party.
The more people talk about Nigel and Reform UK, the better. It does our job for us of raising brand awareness because we're a relatively new brand. But as more people hear about us, they say, who's this lot? And they like what they hear. They look at our policies and say, oh, thank God someone's talking common sense. I'll vote for those guys. So that's great. And I'm very clear. The more help Nigel can give, the better. But he's got some important decisions to make. And a good poker player always keeps their cards close to the chest until the perfect moment.
But that perfect moment is coming soon. How soon or when will Nigel Farage declare his intentions and what will he do with your party? Do you want him to stand to be an MP?
I think that's the least likely thing, is that Nigel would stand under a first-past-the-post system in a constituency. He's consistently said that he wouldn't. And look, we want proportional representation. That's the right and fair and proper way. So look, but who knows? We're getting ready for a May election, so we haven't got that much time. But as I say, Nigel's got to work out what help he can give, when he can give it, and it's a big job of saving Britain. That's literally what we're doing, because STARMERGEDDON will be a catastrophic cocktail for this country. We've got to avoid it. We've got to wake people up. There is a genuine alternative to socialism, and that's Reform UK.
Okay, now Ben Habib, you're the party's deputy leader. You're standing for the party in the likely, shortly to be announced, Wellingborough by-election. You were UKIP, the comparable election of 2015, was second. Can you win it?
Well, I think there's every chance of winning it. It was a very different environment to 2015. I think there was still some hope that the governing class of this country would deliver the country to prosperity. But we've seen, Richard's described STARMERGEDDON. We've actually had Sunak-ageddon, haven't we? He's taken the country. We've already experienced it. He's taken the country to the economic brink. He's taken it to the cultural brink. He's taken it to the political and constitutional brink. He's floated off Northern Ireland without so much as off you go with our blessing. No, this man is awful. Starmer is equally bad. If you want to change the way this country is governed, you have to vote for it.
But how?
And we will. We will get the. So, to answer your question, what we need to do, what I need to do, is to get the Tory voters out. There are 32,000 Tory voters voted for Peter Bone in the last election, 13,000 for Labour. I suspect Labour will get slightly less. All I need to do, my single challenge, is to convince those Tories and those Labour voters who are small c Conservative, of which there are many, to come out, engage with us, recognise what our policies are, and if they're sick of these two, which they should be, and I'm sure they are, vote for us.
Do you worry, though, you don't know where voters live? I've covered enough by-elections with UKIP back in 15 years ago, 10 years ago. The problem was the party would wander around seats and not know where the supporters are. And the other legacy parties know where the voters live.
Well, again, the landscape's very different. We can reach people through social media in a way that we couldn't reach them in 2015. We are going to penetrate people's psyche. We're going to get our message out there, and then it's up to them to decide how they vote. But I aim to win this seat. I aim to be a thorn in Sunak's side until that general election is called.
How big a deal will Brexit be? Brexit was the reason why UKIP did so well in 2015. Will you drive home what some see as the Brexit betrayal?
Absolutely. Brexit is huge. Brexit is not some kind of esoteric political obsession. Brexit would have delivered for the people of Wellingborough prosperity. It would have got rid of net zero. It would have increased, it would have given the government the ability to reduce regulations, which they've shirked. It would have given the government the ability to cut taxes. All of this would help the people of Wellingborough, and we will show them how Brexit would have delivered for them. Brexit's a huge issue.
And back to you, Richard Tice, very briefly. If an election was held today, how many MPs would you win?
As many as possible. The more people that vote for us, then the more we get. And people are very, very concerned about the way the country is being run. And as Ben quite rightly said, listen, if you want to vote for change, if you want change, you've got to vote for it.
OK, there we have it. Richard Tice and Ben Habib, full of the joys of January. Lots of the words Geddon, STARMERGEDDON, Sunak-geddon. Back to you in the studio, Tom and Emily.
Well, let's hope it's not good afternoon Britain-ageddon. I don't know how many geddons we can do. Is that a suffix that we can attach to any word these days? But Christopher Hope, thank you so much.
I think STARMERGEDDON definitely works better than Sunak-ageddon.
Too many syllables.
Too many syllables, but there you go. Very interesting. You've got the Lib Dems trying to get at those blue wall seats and then the Reform Party going after working class votes.
Well, let's get another perspective now. Joining us is the Undersecretary for Business and Trade, Kevin Hollinrake. Kevin, first of all, we've been talking a lot about semantics and Sunak-ageddon, but let's put that charge to you. Are the Tories just as bad as the Labour Party, as Reform UK has been saying?
Well, if you followed what Reform was saying, you'll end up with no seats for Reform, and if you vote for them, and you will end up with STARMERGEDDON. That's a reality. You'll get Keir Starmer in number 10, because that will undermine our vote, clearly. And so if you want to bring that about, if that's what you want to do, then that's the choice you want to make. But it's nonsense to say we're not turning the economy around. That you brought, I think it's an economic disaster to this area. I think Ben Habib was saying. I mean, cast your mind back a year ago, Tom. You had 11% inflation, 11.1% inflation. You had forecasts of deep recession for the UK. You know, all those things have been turned around. You're rising interest rates. All those things have been turned around. You're seeing inflation now below 4%. That's what Rishi committed to do. The economy is growing again. That's what Rishi committed to do. We've reduced the numbers of small boat crossings, the number of people this whole year, by 36%, and that's against a backdrop of rising numbers across Europe. What we're doing is working. What we need to do is continue to deliver on this, and of course keep making our case to the British people we're the right solution.
But Kevin, isn't it unfortunately the case for your party that an increasing number of people are looking to reform? Working class voters, Brexit backing, don't approve of mass immigration, feel let down by the Conservative government. That's why they're looking to vote for a party like Reform, a party that they feel addresses their concerns more.
I do understand that. We've been through a difficult time economically because of COVID, of course, and the cost of living crisis, which has not been a domestic issue. It's been an international issue. But I understand people in those situations feel they want change, but they are getting change. We're seeing real wages now growing in real terms. I say with inflation coming under control. I think what people need to see is if they do fall for the Reform message, they will simply deliver Sir Keir Starmer into number 10 Downing Street. That will be an economic disaster. That will be a disaster in terms of political correctness. You will see all the things that those voters hate implemented across this country, all those transgender issues, all those things that people talk to me about. So people have got to be careful what they wish for. If they want to see a centre-right party run this country, they need to vote for one that's going to return MPs in the next election, which is a Conservative Party.
Now, Kevin, you're right that the country has so far avoided recession. The OBR last year said that 2023 would see a 1.4% contraction in the economy. In fact, we saw 0.6% growth. But I put it to you that 0.6% growth is not much to write home about. Yes, we've avoided recession, but we have not grown particularly quickly. And perhaps the party leader who's talking most about growth these days is Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, talk's cheap, Tom, isn't it? Anybody can say that. But the reality is, since 2010, we've grown faster than France and Germany, as you know, and since Brexit, we've done that. Of course, we want to see faster growth. That's why the Chancellor's brought about tax cuts for people across the economy, but also for businesses, to encourage them to invest. We know business investment is lacking in the UK compared to other areas. we've made those reforms. We are seeing, as you have acknowledged, faster growth than people had envisaged this year against a backdrop of people were predicting a recession. We think we can build on that. Of course, we want to see growth of 2 and 3% where we need to be. Productivity increases. Of course, we need to see that. I'm doing lots of work in the business department with my Secretary of State to try and bring that about. Some very exciting things going on at advanced manufacturing, in terms of free trade agreements around the world, in terms of simplifying regulation, which we are doing. Billions of pounds of regulation coming off businesses. So many things we are doing to make it easier for businesses to drive the economy forward. That's what we need to do. Put businesses first, and they'll drive the economy forward.
And Kevin, just lastly, I was reading this morning how you are calling for the former chief of the Post Office, Paula Venables, to hand back her CBE. You're also backing prosecutions. This is all relating to the horrendous Horizon IT scandal that afflicted so many postal workers. Tell us a bit about what's happening here now.
Well, you're right to bring this up. Obviously, many people will have been absolutely appalled, but also captivated by the programmes on ITV, the Bates versus Post Office programme. There are three things we're trying to do: get money out the door as quickly as possible to postmasters who've been affected by the scandal. We've already paid out £148 million and settled the majority of cases. We are trying to make sure those claims are settled fairly and put people back into the place they were. But also we've instituted this inquiry, this statutory inquiry. Sir Win Williams is undertaking that. It hasn't reached its conclusions yet. When it does, we want to see people identified, responsible for what happened, the appalling circumstances, the appalling actions of the Post Office, but also there's people held to account, and if possible, through prosecutions. But as I've said this morning, I do think that if I was Paula Venables, who got a CBE for her services to the Post Office in 2020, I'd be reflecting on that very carefully and thinking, was that the right thing to accept at that point in time? Given that what's happened subsequently, I think it would be sensible for her to voluntarily return that CBE, and that would be the right thing to do right now.
I think many people would agree with you there. Kevin Hollinrake, thank you very much for joining us here on Good Afternoon Britain.